welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Athlete podcast, my show about mistakes, how they happen, what they mean to people, and ultimately how they change behavior to make people better. This week we have a really exciting guest on the podcast, former Canadian national team player Justin Duff, a volleyball player with a great track record. But before that, my mistake of the week. I recently went and coached with Team Ontario with a youth program there, and there were a lot of other coaches around there, and I realized that in the beginning I wasn't really open to hearing and learning from my fellow coaches who were there. I was a bit closed off. I had a little bit of a mindset of what am I doing here? Am I really going to be able to learn anything from these people? And after about a day that I was there, I was in total there for 7 days, I realized, you know what, I need to just stop thinking too highly of myself and listen to what other people were saying. And I have to say that after I made that decision and realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do, I had one of the best weeks of coaching I ever had. I learned a bunch. I had a bunch of fun. It was a tiring but very, very rewarding weekend in which I really think I was able to sharpen some of the tools of coaching that I've been having. So definitely take that into account. Try to be open to what other people can teach you. But without further ado, let's get into the episode with former national team player Justin Duff. You excited to be here?
Yeah, actually, I am.
Yeah? That's good. So Justin is a former national player for Team Canada Volleyball. He's played pro in Europe for how many seasons now?
9 or 10.
9 or 10, like a long time. Originally from Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Yeah, so not here in Ottawa, but he lives here in Ottawa now. Justin, let's dive straight into it.
Sure.
I kind of want to ask you a little bit about, like, how did you get into volleyball? Like, how did you get in contact with the sport, and how did you start playing it?
So it's a bit of a funny story. The first time I even noticed volleyball, I think I was in the 8th grade, and I had played baseball, and a few of the guys on the team were playing like community or club volleyball. And I was like, what? I've seen volleyball in gym class, but I've never ever thought of like playing it as a sport. And they seemed to be having a good time. And then in grade 9, my first year of high school, I tried out for the volleyball team, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I actually got cut. Yeah, so and it was the right decision by that gym teacher. I was not prepared to play at that level or at any level yet. But I trained a little bit with the kind of the developmental grade 9 team, and then the next year I had a growth spurt. So I was about 6'3" and I could dunk a basketball, and they're like, I guess you can play on our team now. Yeah, and then things just kind of kept rolling from there. I went to the next year I was on the varsity team, and one of the educational assistants, he was like, hey, look, I've played university volleyball and I think you have potential. You just need some coaching and some direction. So he kind of forwarded my name through to the coach of the University of Winnipeg, who saw me and was like, yeah, sure, come play for our club. So just everything spiraled from there. I ended up playing a junior national team after my grade 12 season, and then went right into my first year of university, where I basically sat the bench the whole time. Yeah, like we won a national championship, so we had a really great team, but I just was not, still wasn't good enough. It was funny because I kept getting better, but I kept getting better and then being the worst player on the current team. So it was like, oh man, I'm just terrible at this game, but people still want me, I guess. Yeah, and then after my second year of university, I was starting. Third year, I was playing well, and then my fourth year, I was a first team All-Canadian. So that was a really successful year for me, but funny enough, it was the least successful year for the team. Yeah, so we got first at nationals my first year, second at nationals my second year, tied for fifth at nationals my third year, and then we didn't make nationals my fourth year. So it was very strange, that individual success versus the team, unsuccess.
So I find it interesting that you mentioned like for at the like first part of my career, I was always the like the worst on the team. Like I
Yeah.
kept getting better, but it just kept ending up.
Yeah.
Like how did you deal with sort of like being that role all the time? Like why did you want to persist so much in getting better?
Because I really liked what volleyball did for my life. You know, I started traveling. So right when I first played on that club team, we went to nationals in Calgary, and like I had never been to Calgary before. I'd never gone on like a trip before like that. You know, my family we had some small trips like a couple hours away in the States and stuff, like North Dakota from Winnipeg, but that was about it. So I really enjoyed the opportunities volleyball opened for me, and then as I was getting into my grade 12 season, it was becoming clear that I would have a chance to play for the junior national team, and then I would have a chance to, maybe go to university and get a scholarship and, pursue other things. And so like that was enough motivation for me, just seeing that this was a huge positive in my life with kind of an outrageous potential.
So you went to junior national team with not that much experience
Yeah,
then,
like
right?
2 years.
So you go there, and obviously you're really excited to be there.
Yeah.
Right? So you get in an environment, new environment. And then this is always the question on this podcast.
Yeah.
What was the mistake you made there?
Oh my God, there were so many. So up until that point, volleyball was always like a hobby, or that's how it felt to me, and I didn't take it very seriously. And then I went to junior national team, and it was like I had gotten there, and the coaches had told me like, you had a great club nationals. We're really excited to have you. Like we want you as our like middle one, basically, because we think you have that ability. And I went into that first day like, okay, like I'm pretty sweet and I'm supposed to be the guy here. And it was the first time I'd ever done training, like hard training 2 times a day, and just, wake up, get ready to play volleyball, eat, recover, sleep again, get up, ready to play volleyball. And it was completely beyond me. I had no idea how to handle that. And I did a very bad job handling that. So the mistake I made was, just kind of underestimating the amount of work that would be required and the work that would be expected. Like I just thought, whatever, I don't need to train that well. I play well in games. Like that's what they have me here, right? No, it doesn't really cut it at that level. Even if, regardless of how you will be playing, you need to train well, or else people just don't respect you also.
Yeah. So this was a training camp?
Yeah, it was, I think it was a 6-week training camp in Edmonton. And then we went to Mexico for a tournament.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so you get there and you have this mindset of like, I'm the guy, right? They told me that I want to, I should be the first middle, and then what like when do you start realizing like, oh, what I'm doing is not going to cut it?
Oh, well, I mean, it started, probably a couple of weeks into training where I just was like, everyone's trying so hard and I don't really want to try very hard. And then I realized like, I mean, I didn't realize at the time, but when I look back at it, it was like, okay, like my work ethic or my expectation of what it would mean to be a high level volleyball player was set so unrealistically low. And these people who were really fighting and trying to, work to get better were doing the right thing. Whereas I was like, almost looked down on them like, oh, you take this seriously? Like, yeah. So that was a huge mental hurdle because I just was so ignorant at the time.
And how did you traverse that hurdle?
Many humbling experiences, I would say. So I went from being like the first middle to that like troublemaking middle who was maybe 4th.
Ooh,
yeah, and I wasn't playing. I wasn't on the A side in practice. So we got to that tournament again, and I was like on the bench or just watching, and like, wow, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, how did this happen? Because it seemed like just the other night it was like you're the guy, and then it's all of a sudden like you are so far from being the guy. You're not any guy. Yeah.
So, and then do you remember like having a moment like after that where like you made a decision like, I'm going to take this seriously? Or
no, I think it just took so much more time. Like even going into my first year of university, I thought almost the same thing. Like, okay, I had this experience at junior national team. I have no one else on my team was junior national team or national team. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty different. But it was almost like the same thing over again, where I just had these unrealistic expectations and I had so many other distractions. So I would say that's a kind of a pinnacle thing in my career. It took me so long to realize how hard I needed to work to be taken seriously by others, number one.
Yeah.
And also to continue to develop my craft or to even have fun playing it, because it was still just a hobby for me. Yeah. And I guess maybe things came too easily because I was very talented. Like, I was tall, I jumped really well, I was strong naturally and fast. Like, I didn't have to work for those things so much. They just kind of came to me. And there were a lot of people that I played with or worked with, and they had amazing work ethics. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, that's their thing, right? Like, I'm tall and I can jump, and this guy works hard. Like, that's how it is. So that's kind of the story I told myself. I feel maybe also looking way back on it with like a lot more experience, that it was some kind of a fear, where like I thought it's okay for me to be average or fine because I'm not trying. And
it's like a defense mechanism.
It is. I think so.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're trying as hard as possible and you're doing everything you can and you still fail, like, that hurts. That sucks.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to you need to deal with. You can't hide behind anything when you have that. You have to take it to face, look yourself in the mirror, and say, like, my best efforts weren't enough.
Yeah, and from what I know from working with athletes, that sort of ties into this concept we call athletic identity. It's like, how much of your identity do you describe yourself as an athlete? Right? Probably right now, if I ask you, like, what are you? You say a volleyball athlete, right?
I mean, no, that's always been a piece of me too, where like I tried not to identify myself as an athlete, because I thought there was so much more, so much different to me. And I would look down on people who were like, no, I'm only an athlete. I'm like, well, that's the only thing you can do? That kind of sucks. Like, don't you want to do other stuff? Aren't you interested in other things? Like, I, got into that state where it's like jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. But like, volleyball was the only thing that really set me apart from other people,
And if you look back at it, do you kind of like, maybe not regret, but would you change some of your approach to those things in the early days?
Well, I feel like it was a kind of lesson that I had to learn, like, for myself. I got advice and I had people telling me and like bringing that to my attention, but I always just dismissed it. Or I didn't think that it was something that applied to me. Like, oh, you can't do this at that level because I'm like, oh, watch me do it, like, but again, it was just fear. It was being silly or thinking way too much of yourself, like having just the wrong perspective, So it's actually something I try to bring to coaching youth now. When I see those kind of traits in another athlete, I think I can emote to them a little bit better. And I want to try and give them the perspective I have now as, a 10-year pro who's been doing this for a long time at a quite a high level, and just let them know that it doesn't need to be about other people. It can just be about you. And like, just because you're not trying your best at the moment, and that you're not trying your best. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you need to learn that you can do more, and maybe you need to learn that you can't judge yourself by people here necessarily. You need to judge yourself by these, that unnamed Polish kid that's over there working his butt off, and he's going to be a stud at 22. And how are you going to measure up to that if you want volleyball to be a huge part of your life,
Yeah, and I think that's a difficult thing, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I know I'm like this. I'm exactly the same. If somebody tells me this is not going to work at there or that level, I'm like, watch me.
Yeah.
Like, this works. And I, like, my relationship with mistakes is like, I need to go flat on my face before I'll change my behavior. Like, I'll think that I know everything and that I'm confident, and then I get there and it's not. And like, until the moment I actually like make the terrible mistake, I will not take it. The simple example of this is, obviously I'm from the Netherlands, and my girlfriend warned me probably 1,000 times that winters were cold here.
Yeah.
It took me until the first day where it was minus 30 to accept what I needed to do to survive winter. And she had told me like 100 times.
Yeah.
Right? But I needed to make that mistake in order to truly believe it.
Yeah, and then you learned.
And then I learned, oh, now I'm like, and now I do the same thing too. And that's like, I resonate with that with the coaching thing. I do the same thing to my friends that are like, oh, should we come and visit in January? I'm like, yeah, but know that, it's really cold. And I can see sort of like that resemblance in how you're talking about this of like, is that kind of like a red line through your career where like you needed to go flat on your face before you changed your behavior?
Yes, and I have actually fallen so many times flat on my face. I don't know if people know about that or like I guess that's the whole point of the podcast is to bring that to light to help people understand that athletes, no matter where they are or what they accomplish, like they have so many personal battles and.
And also for everyone listening right now, I want you to envision Justin is sitting across from me and he has a big smile on his face, right? And I can see in his eyes sort of like him looking back and replaying some of those flat on his face moments, and like I can almost see like you appreciate them. Is that about correct?
That's absolutely. I mean, there were so many moments that I thought this is the worst thing ever and it sucks and I don't deserve it and I felt sorry for myself, but then it spurred me into action, or like I found some kind of meaningful thing out of it, even in the worst possible predicaments. I mean, not that anything has been so bad for me. Like I'm lucky to be from Canada and I'm healthy enough, and I've been fortunate in so many ways. So I don't want it to sound like that, but like everyone has these perfect plans, or everyone has this idea or this story, and sometimes that story is only that. It's not reality. Yeah. So that's.
Can you give me an example of one of those situations?
So the biggest example probably, and one of the biggest turning points in my life, I was 24 and I was playing in Turkey and I got hurt in the last workout before the end of preseason. And we were doing squats, 5 sets of 5 or 3 times a week. So it was like the 15th set of squats that week. And I tried to really like push it and get that high weight. And I ended up tearing a ligament, I want to say, in my spine. And I had a bulging disc pretty badly.
Okay.
And so I went down and then I felt like, oh, what was that? And then as I came up, I felt like it was like, oh, I put the bar down and was just like, ah! Almost like, crying from pain. And I ended up missing more than 2 months. Mm-hmm. And I was only at this team to play Champions League matches because we have a foreigner limit in the league. Yeah. Yeah. So I missed every Champions League match until the playoffs. And my coach of that team, who was also the coach of the national team at the time, he took me aside one day and in his office, he said, "Justin, I'm going to send you home." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, like you're not getting better and I don't think you're taking this seriously enough." I was like, "Well, that is absolutely wrong. I'm doing everything I can. I'm doing what the doctor's telling me. Like, I'm not a physician. I'm not a physiotherapist. I don't know how to recover myself. That's these guys' job, right? Like, so if I'm not getting better, you should actually come down on them, in my opinion. But whatever, that's also a pro sport reality. Like, it's going to hurt you in the end, so you need to be careful." So anyways, I ended up being able to recover, and for whatever reason, I started playing very well, very quickly from that time away. And we lost in that first Champions League series, so I only played 2 matches, but I played very, very well. And because of that, I was able to join a Russian team, which is the top league for their playoffs, because I was no longer needed in this Turkish team. So I went to Russia, was playing with these guys I like idolized, like Grosjean and Mazersky, like 2 super high-end players still in the world today. Yeah. And another guy, Sergei Chichukin, he went to 4 or 5 Olympics. Like the quality of people I was around was outstanding. And it was the first time in my life where I was training and trying really hard and failing every day. And like I just knew like these guys are beyond me. I don't even know why I'm here. I almost feel like an imposter, but I need to try and hide that and just do my part. So I put everything aside and was just like, yep, I don't care if I'm just a distraction. I don't care if I'm not a star on this team. Like these guys are better than me and I accept that and I'm just going to try and do my part. And that was maybe the healthiest mentally I'd been playing because I played really well and we ended up winning the Russian championship. And that's when everything went wrong.
Why did it go wrong?
Well, I had those couple. I was only there for 3 months, I'd say, and we had a lot. Like we had to beat Zenit Kazan, who was like a perennial powerhouse in Europe, with Matt Anderson at 26, and he was a star, and we beat them pretty handily. We had to beat Novosibirsk, who had won the European Champions League that year as well, and we lost to them 2 games there. We won 2 games back at home, and then we won the 3rd game there, like no question. We just crushed them. So everything was like, wow, we're really I'm getting everything out of this work that I put in the last couple months. And then we run the Russian Championship, and everyone gets excited and has a bunch of vodka, and the president of the team, who doesn't speak any English, is like, Justin, we want to hire you for next year. We want you to come back. And I was like, great.
Yeah.
I am set. I'm going to be playing on a top team in Russia, the best league, like making amazing money. Like this is really where my whole career turns to that, like, I was a talent and now I'm a star. And of course, first I get back to national team, and last week before we start our World League campaign, I tear my patella tendon. Mm-hmm. And I spend the whole summer trying to recover and coming back to play too quickly and tearing it again and again and again and hurting it. And the Russian team is like, hey, Justin, I know we said that we want you back now, but we ended up having to take another player. So, and during that time where they had kind of kept me on a leash, I was saying no to a lot of other really great contracts. And then I was hurt and I was jobless and I was living in Gatineau and it was cold and so that sucked. Yeah. And in a relationship as well that was going quite downhill. So it's just like all those things put together, like that that like great accomplishment followed by that like disappointment with the injury, disappointment with the club, disappointment with the relationship. Like it hits you all at once. And I got a message from my agent in late December, and it said, Justin, there's a team in Indonesia that's interested in you. Do you want to go? And I looked at, I was in Winnipeg at the time, it was negative 35, and I looked at weather in Indonesia, and it was plus 35. I'm like, yep. Yeah. So in 2 days, I got on that plane and I just left and I went to Indonesia, which is not a top league. Like,
no,
people were very confused as to why I was going there, and I had no other option that was interesting. So I went there and I had like a life-changing experience where I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about just how different people work. Like, it's different than Europe, right? Like Southeast Asia, that's not the same.
I can imagine. I've never lived there, but I already had that same experience going from the Netherlands to Greece, where I expected it to be a Western culture, and it's not.
Not at all.
Not at all. No. So like I can sort of imagine what it must be like when you go to Southeast Asia.
Yeah, just a way different. And the volleyball was bad, but you always had 2 foreigners on a team, and they're always like a pro, like a Brazilian guy who's 30 years old. Like, he knows how to play. He's pretty good. He just was never national team, but so you have to really you had to fight. It was easy to get distracted, but you really had to put your time in. And I had a great teammate there, an American guy, Ryan Owens, who taught me a lot about life and really pushed some boundaries of mine. And so, yeah, it was such a big change from thinking that I was on the top of the world, especially volleyball-wise, to going to, I'm in like one of the worst leagues, and I'm just kind of enjoying life.
And what I'm interested in is like you come of that great season with the Russian team, or season, few months, and then you get injured going into the international season. Yeah. Like, how much do you think those were kind of related? Was it just like injuries sometimes happen, or do you think like because you were so hyped or something, maybe didn't self-check enough and therefore like try too hard, or like do you feel like that was related?
It was definitely related. Like, it all came from the back injury where I lost a couple months of fitness and blah blah blah, and then I went to Russia and I was playing intense games very quickly and at the maximum of my mental and physical capacity, because if I wasn't playing at 100 I was bad.
Yeah,
like I had the guy that I was replacing just killing me in practice, and I was like, oh my goodness, like things need to change real quick here. So that was different.
So looking back at it, you said like I come off that and maybe return to that intensity maybe a bit too quick.
Yeah, well, I ended up, because of those games, I ended up getting hurt after we played the first game against Zenit Kazan. And it was the same kind of thing, like some kind of minor tear. And I had some shockwave therapy, I had a bunch of different stuff, bunch of whatever Russian pills that they give you. I don't want to talk about, I don't know what they were, but yeah. And then you just keep playing through it, and you're too excited to really stop or to think like, oh, have I recovered properly here? Or have I given myself the time? And then national team comes, and I was on the top of the world. I was like, yeah, I just won in Russia. Like, I'm going to be a star this summer. Everyone's going to see that. Everyone's going to understand it. And then, like, I didn't even jump. I just started my approach before, a 7 or 31.
Yeah.
And I heard like and I was just like, and I stood there.
It was just gone.
Oh yeah. And everyone on my team was like, what's wrong? Because I didn't like scream out or anything. I'm just like, hurt my knee, and sat down, and like just, yeah, kind of a disaster.
and like, how does that, I think looking back, how would you have approached that maybe a little bit different after that season?
I mean, maybe I would have taken a little bit more time. I would have understood that I need to ask for time instead of just assume that the coaching staff knows what's best for me. Because, like I said before, there are a lot of support staff that you have, physios and massage and blah, blah, blah. And like they have a lot of education. They're doing their best work, but they got 12 other guys or 15 other guys or who knows, right? Like, yeah. And if I don't know if everyone knows their body the best, but you got to have some kind of inkling. Like, as much as I want to play and as excited as I am right now, I need some time. If I played until, the 15th of May or something, and then I'm back with national team the next week, and after traveling a bunch, it's not a good idea. Yeah.
And is it fair to say that that's fairly similar to what happened when you were, the other team where you hurt your back, and it's that conversation of like, I thought it was, the support staff job of getting me healthy. Is that the kind of like similar situation where it's like you're trusting maybe other people
too much,
a bit too much? Yeah. I don't know. They seem rather similar.
Well, that's the tricky part, right? Like in professional sports, what I've learned is that you are fully liable. So like if I get hurt and my team decides that they don't want to pay me for a couple months to get better and they just fire me, that's going to happen. Yeah. And I'm not going to be able to take them to court because it's going to be very difficult. I haven't been lucky. I haven't played in a place like the Netherlands where things are organized and people are held accountable. I've played in, Greece and Turkey and Indonesia, Russia. Like, these guys are in Russia. They're paying me in $100 US bills that I kept in my cabinet. Like, I was terrified there. So there are a lot of weird things going on. And of course, I have whatever paperwork they gave me, and I took it totally illegally into Canada and all that stuff. But man, can I really trust these guys? Like, where's the bank at?
and how do you deal with that? Because that must be, distracting situations.
Well, you deal with it in the sense that you have to understand that you're not in Canada, and things just happen in other countries, and that's how it goes. My American friend was always trying to keep the Indonesians super honest and be like, no, this is not how you treat professionals. This is blah, blah. But it's like, yeah, but these people don't think like that. That's really not a part of how the majority of that population goes about life. So how can you have like this standard there in, USA when you think of like the MLB or NHL and NBA? Like, I bet you those guys aren't waiting for paychecks. Those guys aren't being given the ring around by team management. Like, I have these situations where my team management won't talk to me for 2 months, and because they owe me money and they don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And they just ignore my phone calls, and I'm like, what can I do?
Yeah, I remember when I was living in Greece, there was a professional basketball team in the same town. I lived in a tiny town. And stories like that were all the time. Like, U.S. players would come, and then like a month later would be gone again. Yeah. Or like, they'd be like, yeah, we didn't get paid for the last like 2 months. And it's an interesting dynamic, and I think what's really interesting, and that's how I experience like living in a culture like that too, is it's just not how they think. Yeah. Rather than, I don't know about you, but one of the mistakes I made first coming there is thinking that they were making mistakes. right? Seeing it as, I remember the biggest thing I remember, I did my master's degree in Greece.
Sure.
And one of the things I remember was I had an assignment due on Tuesday. And by the Friday before, I still hadn't gotten the assignment. And it was a 15-page paper.
Wow.
Right? So in my mind, I'm like, wait, there's only 4 days left until this is due, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Right? So in my mind, I'm like, the teacher is not giving me the right information. Yeah. But what I learned after a few months, what the mistake was there, was like, no, that's not how it works. How it works is that the teacher just gives it to you at some point, and you just relax. And then you say, oh, but I only have 4 days. Can I just give it in later? And the teacher's like, oh yeah, just give it in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not that that's because they're lax or lazy. It's just their culture is not as strict as, for instance, the Netherlands, and I found Canada here too. Yeah. Right? It's a different cultural norm where like the work will get done. It's just when it gets done, you don't know.
No.
And that's something that I found myself making that mistake, but actually once I sort of accepted that fact, I actually started working really well in that environment, where it's like, okay, now sure, this is how it's going to work, rather than how I want it to work or expect it to work. This is how it's going to be, and if I work within those parameters, I'm going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to a next question. With all your experience, playing in Turkey and Greece and in Indonesia and in Russia, like what are some of the like mistakes you made going abroad and like living in other cultures? And maybe not necessarily in terms of like volleyball, but just in, you're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you live there. Like,
right.
How did you, like, what are some things that you realized you had to change living abroad as a professional athlete?
Well, I had to get used to people not speaking English, because Canada is a French and an English country, but the vast majority is English.
Yeah.
And I don't speak French. I grew up here all my life, and I speak very, very little French. Like, I'm super bad. So, like, how can I expect everyone else in the world to speak English? In Europe, you get lucky sometimes, especially if you're in, like, the Scandinavian country or, Germany or something, then you'll get it. But in Turkey, if I go somewhere and I don't know how to speak, like, some rudimentary Turkish, I probably can't get any help from someone.
Yeah.
So I always took that as to heart, and I always tried to learn how to do the basics, like navigation, or like I want something in every language, or like, how to go to the grocery store and explain, like, I need 4 bell peppers. Where are they? Because I feel like it's my place to do that. And I don't think that it's another person's obligation to serve me in English, because they're just living in their country and like their language is good. So why would they go above and beyond that? Like, I haven't done that in my own country, even for French.
Yeah. And did you get any language training from the teams? Like, was that provided, or did you have to like it yourself, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so like in my contract the very first year, I asked for like language classes. That was one of like my stipulations, and we practiced twice a day. It was like 9 to 11, 4 to 7. And one of the team managers was like, hey, Justin, we found a language class. It starts at 6. And I was like, I'm always practicing at that time. Why would you come to me with a language class that starts in the middle of my practice? Like, is that, and I was, young and like, oh no, okay, like, sorry, I'm not going to take it. Well, yeah, sorry. But, I look back now and I'm like, whoa, man, how could someone, especially in a management position, be that out to lunch, or like be that, I don't know, just disinterested, that they're like, oh yeah, this is the thing. Do you want to do it? I'm like, no, of course not.
Yeah. Do you think that was kind of like on purpose? Like, oh, we'll just get one and it's during practice time, so we don't actually have to
You know what? I never thought it was on purpose, because it's like the prices aren't so outrageous. I just took it as I cannot trust anyone here to do anything for me. Yeah. So I need to find my own time. And I did. I found an online kind of course. I think it was called Babbel.
Oh, it's like an app. I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually really good before it. Like, it had like a really good like word trainer. But then they went super monetized and they changed up their format and it became really clunky and junk. I don't know. It fell out of. I used it for like 3 languages, So it was great, and then it became annoying.
Yeah. That's a shame. That's interesting about the language, especially of course coming from a country with two official languages. How did you manage them when you were living in Gatineau?
Gatineau is funny because it's like you're in Ottawa, you're speaking English, there's no problem. As soon as you go across that bridge, it's like you might get someone who's just like zero English.
They probably can, but they might not want to.
So that's right? So yeah, I know some really basic stuff, but I just usually kept to myself, or I spoke English and hoped that they would return the favor.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm loving the input you're giving. I think it's a really interesting insight into like how do you as an athlete, how do you develop into a place where you work hard enough and you do the things that are right for you.
Yeah.
Right. And what I'm hearing a lot, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that what you have to learn a lot is like, how do I care for myself? How do I put myself in a position where I can succeed? Right. First with like, not trying hard enough because you don't want to put yourself out there. And then like maybe with some of the physical injuries where, you might have maybe like taken some more time to look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm going to put myself first and say, I need to take a break or something like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into a question that I like asking is like, what kind of advice would you have for young athletes that, maybe have the aspiration to go and play professional sports, whether that's in volleyball or any other sports? Like, what would you tell them if looking forward at their career?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would tell them is to watch their favorite player, not only their favorite player, but a bunch of their favorite players, especially in a similar position. And just look at the little things they do with their body, like how they move, how they execute skills, because there's so much to learn and you can really expedite that learning by copying others. So like you don't need to have the revolutionary, like, oh, I'm going to hit a step back three. Like, oh, that's a thing I can do. No, you watch Luka Doncic and James Harden hit 1,000 a season and you're like, oh, okay, that's a thing that those guys figured out and they learned how to do it. Like, so I would say, get a lot of video, watch a lot of the sport you're interested in, and just try and like watch it intently. Put your phone down and really look and be like, okay, that's what he's doing with his body when he does that, or she's moving this way, okay? Because there's so much to be learned, whether you're cognizant of it or not, and then that can help you just get better quicker. In my opinion, I think.
Yeah, I really like the like. There's so much to be learned whether you're paying attention or not, and it's your own. Like there is so much out there to learn, but the only way you can tap into that is if you actually engage and look for things that you can learn. I think that's what I sometimes say when I'm coaching is I can only do probably about 15 to 20% of the work. I can design drills that are perfectly capable of teaching things. I can give the right feedback. I can do everything right. But if you're not listening, nothing will happen. Yeah. Right? You need to engage, whether you're on the court or watching a video or talking to your coach or anyone else, like outside of your sport. Like if you're not listening, if you're not engaged and thinking critically about what's going to happen, you're not going to learn anything. I think it's really interesting how you say it's like go watch people but like watch them. Yeah. Not just look at
them. That's the big difference. Them. Look and watch are completely different.
And like with my team last year, we said listen to hear, not to respond. Right? It's a similar kind of thing. It's like when somebody's telling you something, listen to understand what they're saying, rather than listen to find the response that you want to give. Yeah. Right? So sometimes not responding or not saying anything is just as, or probably more effective as trying to come up with a savvy remark of like, yeah, but. Like the moment you hear, yeah, but, like, okay, you're not listening. Yeah. You're finding a response or something to dispute in what I'm saying.
And that's a protection mechanism for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's but again, like, that's something to learn, right? Like, I can imagine listening to your story. That is something you did in your early career.
Absolutely.
And like, you've learned how to start listening.
Yeah, or try to, right? At least give them... Because I do feel that sometimes people just say things, to make it seem like they're big or important or whatever. But there are a lot of people there who are just trying to help or just trying to, maybe show you something that you're not getting. And if your first instinct is to tell them, well, no, because you don't understand, to fluff it up, then what are you doing? What's the point? Like, you might as well tell that person, never talk to me. And then just understand that you're not going to get any better or any, benefit from that person's years of experience.
Yeah. It's actually interesting. You weren't here when I was doing the intro to this actual podcast.
Okay.
And I have this segment in the podcast called My Mistake of the Week.
Oh.
It's like I started the podcast with, something that I did in the previous time that I realized was a mistake and I should have done different, or I realized in the moment that I wasn't doing what I want. And my mistake of the week was actually that I went to a coaching, like a Team Ontario coaching thing with a bunch of different coaches and mentor coaches and whatever. And I wasn't open enough to listening to what other people were telling me at the beginning. And I realized that after one day, and after that day, the last 6 days of that, I learned a bunch. But it was only because after day one, I was like, I have not been listening. I've been closed and kind of like, don't talk to me. I already know it.
Yeah.
Like that kind of mentality. And that change made it that I had a great week and learned a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool that you just mentioned that, because that was one of the things that I know for myself I need to work on as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that too, because it just stifles you. Like sometimes you can't put into your mind exactly what has been said to you right away. Sometimes you need to like think about it over a little bit of time, and then you get the development, then you get the meaning. And I also just feel it's good to learn or to hear different words from a lot of different people. And then you, in your mind, you put it together in this kind of strange amalgamation that works for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you put together what people are telling you. Yeah. So there's one other topic that I would like to discuss with you and talk about, which, I think right now is on your mind a lot, which is like how do you transition from being a professional player into, after retirement, whatever that is. I don't know, we talked about it a little bit like before and stuff like that. It's like, I guess the first question is what are some things that you learned through your career as a volleyball player that you think are really going to help you afterwards as, somebody in the workplace or whatever you end up doing?
I've learned to be incredibly resilient, because things have gone pretty well for me in my life, but a lot of things have gone not according to plan, and I have just made so many mistakes and got back up and kept doing different things. So one of the biggest, and actually I'm happy we're doing this podcast now because it's so fresh in my mind, but maybe 6 weeks ago I started studying for my GMAT to try and get into business school and do my MBA, and I just got news that I did not get in. You did not? Did not get in.
That's a shame.
It sucks. I feel terrible about it, and I'm so disappointed. But, I have other things. I've always kind of hedged my bets. I've had plan Bs and plan As, plan Cs, and whatnot. And, all right, sorry, I don't mean to lose words, but there are times when things look super bad and you're really disappointed. And that's okay. It's completely normal. It depends on how you respond to that. So I can respond to this in a couple of different ways, and I'm sure I'll start with one and then go to the other, where I'll feel sorry for myself, get mad a little bit, maybe have a couple drinks, but it's like that can't last for a week, that can't last for a month, that can last for like a day. And then it's like, what are you doing to better yourself? Yeah. So one of the first things I want to do is I just want to talk to the admission council or a committee and be like, hey, what are some ways I can make myself more appealing to you in the future? Yeah. Like, what are active things that I can do? Because if you're just sitting there waiting for things to happen, if you might get lucky. Yeah. But otherwise, you need to be active. You need to take control on situations, and even bad situations, especially bad situations. And you need to make sure that you turn that, you learn something, and you try and make it benefit you in the future, because you're capable of doing that and you're responsible to do that for yourself. Yeah, I think it's a very good point. The thing I sometimes say is like what sets really good athletes apart from call it normal people
is their ability to, fail and make mistakes and get up over and over and over again. And it's really interesting that you say, so like, it's something I've learned in volleyball, like to deal with adversity and like, obviously don't want to, but immediately applying that to your life, dealing with this setback that you've obviously had, because I know we talked about this. You really wanted this this opportunity to go back to school and do that MBA.
Yeah.
So that's obviously not nice news, but still it's really interesting to see how those skills then kind of like transpose into life after your career.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like it has to make you better. I like the idea of kind of sharpening yourself, and that's what adversity does. It just, you can either break or you can get sharper. And I would rather get sharper.
Yeah.
Because there are things, I'm, as an elite athlete, you have an appreciation for accomplishment. You have an appreciation for excellence. And a lot of people have that in their jobs as well, And that's the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be the kind of person who's just content doing any one thing. I kind of want to be that person who's always striving for the next thing. So, I mean, I don't think I could have done anything much better. I worked super hard, but it just didn't work out. And that's something I have to deal with. And and try and rebound from,
Yeah, exactly. So, if we kind of look at the career transition in a little bit of a bigger light,
picture, yeah.
Right? And I'm sure, like, when do you remember sort of starting to think of, like, what am I going to do after this? Like, was that in the last year you played, or has that been, like, a question throughout your career?
It was just in the last couple of years, actually, probably since the Olympics, 2016. Okay. Whereas before, I was just like, I play volleyball, and infinitely. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Play as long as you can, go everywhere, do this and that. But I kind of started to get homesick for Canada and I love all the experiences that I've had. I've learned so much, but I've almost felt a little bit jaded, especially this season, because we had a very successful year, but there were some other issues involved, and I was just like, I'm not enjoying a big part of what it is to be a professional athlete overseas. And the volleyball is great, and my teammates are awesome. We're having so much fun there, but that's only a piece of what else is going on. And so for me, it's like, I know I've had such a good time being in Canada. I've been here since like May or June, and it's so nice. And I just now I feel myself wanting to be here and to stay here and to make a life here. And I know that I'm valuable overseas because I can play volleyball, but what am I valuable for here in Canada? Like, I can't play professional volleyball. I can coach, I can do some other things, but I just want to find other things that I can, add value to me, and then to give me a little bit more direction. There are a few things I'm interested in doing, but they're not solidified yet, Yeah.
So, and how do you go about, like, finding that? Do you go out and try a lot of things, or how do you...
I think that's it. I meet a lot of people. Like, I just like starting conversations on the street with anyone, like, because I feel like, you give them a little smile and people are generally going to tell you a little bit about themselves. Because when I was growing up, I thought, okay, you can be like a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a janitor. Like, those are your choices. But there are so many ways people, make money or make a living or enjoy their career. And a lot of that is just exposure. Like, you don't know that there's, someone out there. I met a lady at an airport lounge the other day. She was an older lady, probably 60 something, but she looked fantastic, like some kind of a model or something.
Yeah.
She was wearing a business suit, and I asked her, like, what do you do? And she's like, I sell tape. I'm like a broker for, like tape, like industrial tape. So,
okay, yeah.
Like, this is a product that we sell right from the factory to like other distributors like 3M and stuff. I'm like, you sell tape.
I've never heard of somebody selling tape.
Yeah, same. I never talked to a tape seller, and she was into it. She was going, telling me about the different types and like the qualities and blah, blah. And I was like, wow.
There's a lot about tape.
Yeah, and clearly you've made a good living based off this product. And yeah, like, I would never have thought of that had I not talked to you.
That's really cool. I think, I would advise everyone who is not, sure about what they want to do is go talk to people.
Yeah.
Right? It's I know for me that I always took myself as, like, I wasn't a super, like, inventive entrepreneur type person. Like I was, I have my task and I stick to my task and I do it well and I enjoy doing it. And actually now being here and sort of like figuring out how I'm going to use the skills I have to, make a living and make a career. I have the same thing. I enjoy the process of figuring that out, talking to people, and then obviously this podcast is part of that, right? This is also my idea of like, how am I going to solidify what I know I can do, but it's not necessarily like a job, right? I have skills, but do I really have a job? Right. And I think it's really interesting to see how you go about that. So what are some things that you have now, let's put it away, like, let's put it as well, like, what are some fields that you're gravitating towards that you've figured out that where you can be effective?
Well, I have a lot of travel experience and I'm very comfortable doing that kind of stuff. I've met so many people from different backgrounds, so I feel like any kind of career that's based on relationship building or connecting or networking is something that I would excel in. I did a volleyball camp here a few weeks ago for adults because I realized there's so many opportunities for like youth to like learn and develop, but for adults it's like you just play your
Saturday night or Friday night.
Yeah, your rec league game and you can't learn any skills. You don't have any time for that. So I actually loved that. It was so fun and people were really into it, like more so than kids because they're a little more serious, in general. Yeah. So that was great. I would definitely do that again if I was sticking around here. Just because, like, not as a huge, business on an endeavor, but something to be on the side. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I grow up yet. I still got a little bit of time.
In case people don't really know who Justin is, he just said when I grow up, he's about like 6'8". And this is kind of weird for me because I'm about 6'6". I'm not really used to looking up to people. So that's why I had to laugh about that a little bit. So we'll do one last question and then we'll wrap it up because we're running through the time really quickly. We're just having a good conversation. So, and this for people who maybe not as well versed in volleyball might be a little bit of a different question, but I'm a coach. I know Justin's a coach. We both are volleyball players. We enjoy the sport a lot. So I know that he did the adult camp, and was it your first time like fully organizing sort of like head coach role at program?
Yeah.
So what was the standout mistake you made setting up this program?
I called the beginners camp a beginners camp.
Yes.
Yeah. That was by far the biggest mistake. So for me, I didn't know what to expect as far as skill went from who would be attending this camp because I haven't spent a lot of time in the Ottawa volleyball community, or I haven't seen the level here, right? And so the beginners camp, in my mind, was actually pretty decent. It was like widely applicable to everyone from, if you're pretty new at volleyball to like if you've been playing for a bunch of years, but you just don't have all the fundamental skills at a high level. Yeah. So anyone could come to that in my mind. But because I built it as a beginners camp, I had a capacity of 24. Yeah. First night, I got 23 for the advanced camp. Yeah. 8 for the beginners camp. And I was like, well, all the marketing was the same, blah, blah, blah. I had the write-ups, but clearly like this was not appealing to people because their impression of themselves was different than what that meant, right? Yeah. So I went right away back to the Facebook group and to the Shopify page, and I changed the write-up and made it beginner/intermediate. Yeah. And I guess people told their friends and stuff too, because the second night I had 18. Yeah. And I was like, okay, 18 out of 24 is fine. And I had the full 24 in the advanced camp. But I looked at my shop page and I had, I think, 70 page views that day and only like 2 purchases the last day. Okay. So to me, because the advanced camp had sold out, it made me think, okay, more people came. They're like, I don't want to go to beginner. So I'm going to exit. So that I think the wording is very very important there. Yeah, right? Begintermediate.
Begintermediate. That's a good one. But it also, we talked about a little bit about athletic identity like 30 minutes ago. And I think that this also shows a little bit that even in people who are, probably nowhere near ever playing professionally, right? Yeah. which is only for, it's all like few, right, that can reach it and have the right path and the right opportunities to get there. That no matter what level you play, there's a part of your identity that you ascribe to the sport you play. And that even if you just play your rec league once a week, if you don't identify as a beginner, you will not go to a camp like that or something like that. And I think that's really interesting to see that dynamic, and I'm happy you shared that, because it shows that no matter the level, people have some of their identity linked to the sport they play, and it's really important for that part of the identity to be recognized. Because beginner it can be interpreted as a term of just people who maybe don't have as much experience or whatever, but for a lot of people, I think they feel like just they've played a few years, they've advanced to the next level kind of thing.
Sure. Like I did a survey monkey after, just to get some information, and one of them was like, a lot of the people that attended my camp have been playing volleyball for 5 or more years. And doesn't matter, like maybe they only played once per week and they have a lot of work they could do on basic skills. Like in their mind, after 5 years of something, you're probably going to say you're advanced at it.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting as well, because it's probably a little bit of a terminology change for you, coming from maybe a different level to scaling that to what, you know, the people here in Ottawa are doing.
Yeah. But you know, it worked out, because like I was expecting one thing and it was almost bang on. So surprisingly so, because I was a little bit nervous that I was going to be expecting, you know, my advanced, I thought, oh, maybe like they're going to be mad if I'm doing some basic skills with them, because we've done this and we all played college before. Because that's like different. If I'm with a bunch of people who played college or university, or maybe some people that actually played pro, which I know there are a few in the Ottawa area, like I'm going to treat them a little bit differently than someone who's been playing rec for 5 years. You know, like it is different. Yeah. So.
But that's really cool. If anyone is interested in, are you going to do another one?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to go to Turkey next week.
Okay.
And I might be there until May. So if I do another one, it'll be next summer.
Okay. Well, if anyone's interested in going to one of these camps, make sure to contact me, and then I'll pass it along to Justin to persuade him to do another one if there's enough ask for it.
It's going to be all advanced camps. Advanced and super advanced.
Super advanced, elite.
Elite, plus
everything.
1. Yeah, whatever I can do.
So, Justin, any final remarks, comments, concerns you want to share with the listeners of this podcast?
I want to say that for some athletes, the path is direct. The very, very talented few at the very top end, you know, they can make no mistake. Things just happen, and it keeps rolling. For the vast, vast majority, and this is probably more than just athletics, but I'm going to say athletics, it's a fight. And if you're not prepared to take a few hits, you are not going to win that fight. So stay resilient, stay humble, and try to find an active way to influence your life, because you probably have a lot of success if you take that mentality towards it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and again, that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, right? Talk about the punches you've gotten in the face, and how to deal with that, and give people maybe some grounds to work on, and have some sort of base of, you know, how did other people do that? Again, it's probably the same as you said. You want to get better, go watch people. Yeah. Right? You
go
want to
do
learn
something.
You want to learn how to become resilient. It's not this innate thing that you either have or you don't. You learn how to be resilient. Yeah. And listen to people who have gone through it, and learn from them how they learned how to be resilient. Mm-hmm. And if you can take that, if you listen to, you talk to people and listen to athletes like Justin on how they became resilient, you can take a big step and avoid a lot of the mistakes, and just keep raising your level of resiliency. Justin, I want to thank you very much for being on. I had a lot of fun talking about your career and a bunch of other things.
Oh, thanks.
If you're interested, please make sure to check out my Instagram. It's JWK Mental Performance Training. Justin, do you have any place where we can follow you on social media?
I do Instagram at JustWDuff.
There you go. Is it full of like highlight videos and stuff like that?
No, it's pretty boring lately, honestly. But I like having followers. It's nice. So get on
And
there.
I'm sure that if you want to ask Justin some questions on there, you can just send him a DM and he'll help you out in the best of his capabilities. Is that right?
For sure.
There you go. Thank you very much for listening to the Imperfect Athlete podcast, and I hope to see you again in the next episode.